I want to break this news to everyone. Last evening, my 84-year-old mom picked up YOGAi and she took a class of Sunil at 10:30 at night. Now that's the power of the book and the story. So that is a very fancy introduction to a man who to me looks design even. Not just wears design, thinks design, he looks design also. So that's the beauty of this man. When he passes by you, you think this is the beauty of God's creation. A man whom I have followed for maybe over a decade, and a gentleman whom without saying much actually ended up communicating with me, and that is AI. So when you look back our journey of last 10, 12 years, I don't think we've met more than a few times, but perhaps we feel connected. So today when we are at My Good School, we have people from Singapore, we have a person from Vancouver, we have people from all over the world, and we are connected. That's the beauty. That's the power of connection. And if you look at what Sunil is going to share with you, he's going to share the power of a connection which is way beyond material. So I don't want to go beyond that because I can talk the next half hour about Sunil. But I want Rishona to take over, who is the school captain. Thank you, Jugji, for giving me this chance to pop in and say hi to Sunil. Over to you, Rishona.
Thank you, sir. So today we have a meeting place with Mr. Sunil Malhotra. Just giving a quick introduction. So Sunil Malhotra is the founder and CEO of Ideafarms. He's a breakthrough practitioner of design thinking, a serial entrepreneur as well as a thought leader in design strategy. His entrepreneurial experience spans design consulting, manufacturing, and information technology. He's also the author of YOGAi, and today we'll be discussing about his book and the fascinating intersection of yoga and AI. So would you like to speak a few words about yourself and your book?
So thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. I don't do this very often. First of all, I have to thank Sandeep because it's very difficult to live up to introductions like the one that he's done. Thank you. Very grateful, Sandeep, but I don't know if I deserve a fraction of what you said about me. Yes, it's true that we've known each other for maybe 15, 20 years, and we must have met only a handful of times. But that connection always stays. And what I see now is that Sandeep has become a big champion of this book, YOGAi, which I spent almost two and a half years writing. Rishona, thank you for that short introduction. I think that suffices. I don't need to say very much about myself because I'm doing this session today at Sandeep's behest. I'm a little nervous because I'm not very comfortable speaking to a young audience, especially because I don't understand them. And I wish a lot of people of my generation and a few generations below me had a similar mindset that they don't understand. In fact, we've grown up thinking that as we grow older and accumulate experience, we understand everything in the world, and we don't. So that's the quick context of what this is all about, and that's the context of the book as well. On a lighter note, let me say that, it's very difficult, it's very enervating for me to actually sit here and be told that I have to talk about the book and answer questions. Because as everybody knows, the only way you can answer questions about any text is if you've read it. And unfortunately, I've only written YOGAi, I haven't read YOGAi yet. So let's try to make this as interactive as possible. I have to also see what's happening in the chat. Okay, nothing happening in the chat. Very quickly, I think maybe Rishona, have you read the book? Or part of it at least?
Yes, sir, I've read a bit of the starting of the introduction. I've not completed it yet, but yes, I have started reading it.
Okay, if you read the introduction, you can throw the rest of the book away because that's all the book is about. Details of the introduction that you see in the rest of the book. And Sandeep, you have read the book, I think.
Yeah, I've read the whole book.
Okay. Do you think that this is a book that would, that is within reach of younger audiences?
I think, Sunil, my experience with working with younger audiences, they are way ahead of us, and they can definitely take it. I think let's have Rishona quiz you, and you'll know what the introduction has done to her brain. And she has a set of
That's right.
questions ready. So,
That,
Rishona, over to you.
I'll be,
Rishona, just speak closer to the mic, and if you can put your video on, Sunil will answer better if it works.
so actually my camera is not working right now since I'm using a different device from the one I usually use.
Just get closer to the mic and a little louder. Thank you.
Okay, so is it better now?
yeah.
So I'll just be commencing the question answer session. I'll be answering questioning the first few, and then we'll move on to the rest of the audience. So my first question for you is, the idea of yoga and AI is very unique to me. So how did the idea of writing this book come to you, and what meaning does it hold in your life?
Interesting. So I think this is a great start, and I would urge everybody on the call to actually jump in exactly right here, because we get to get a sense of what's really going on. So while I'm trying to answer what yoga and AI, what the connection is, why I thought of writing the book, I thought it might be a good idea for anybody who feels like could jump in and say what does he or she think of what yoga is and what AI is. And then let's see whether what I'm talking about and what you guys think is at odds, or is it aligned, right? So let me answer the question probably on behalf of everybody, because I spoke to a lot of people. How I got to this idea was that, if you look at the last few years, I've been involved with something called exponential technologies since 2016, 2017, almost 10 years. There is a very interesting education, I think, higher education institute. It's not a physical institute. They work out of NASA in California, NASA's premises, called the Singularity University. These people have come up with the idea that they built their entire premise on the fact that, technology every 12 to 18 months is doubling in terms of computational power and crashing in terms of prices. What that really means is that you're getting more and more power of technology in your hands, and it's becoming more and more accessible to the common man. Let me give you an example. The phones that we are using today, the devices we are using today, let's specifically talk about the cell phone that we are using today, packs about 10,000 times the power John F. Kennedy and NASA had in 1969 when they first put man on the moon. So can you believe that, today we can all afford 10,000 times the technology that was available to a country like America about maybe 40 years back, 40, 60 years back, 50 years back, okay, 55 years ago. This has very, very, very wide implications. One is that it's accessible. Second is, what it does is that it moves the entire world from being in scarcity into something called abundance. So while you hear all media reports, you read wherever you go, most of the time all you hear is negative about what the world is going through. There's climate change, man is a greedy animal, lots of crime going on everywhere, political systems are unstable. But just flip that whole thing around. Do you know that, I'm going to go out here and say it to everybody, we live probably in the best times ever. In the 1960s, people didn't live beyond maybe 60. Today, the average age of humankind has gone up to close to 80. Infant mortality is at an all-time low. Poverty is at an all-time low. So, what's going on? Why is it that Sunil says something like this, that we are living in the best times, and there are a few others who agree, but we generally feel that there is we are living in the worst times ever. This is a combination of religion, politics, and the media, which is the megaphone, which will only pick up the negatives and amplify it. And that has resulted in polarizing the world. So remember that that's one placeholder, that it's polarizing the world and creating isolation. Let me now bring in a very interesting experience that each one of us has gone through since 2020. We had a global pandemic. And what that caused was, it just bubbled up these exponential technologies like Zoom and Google Meet that we're using right now. And like Sandeep was saying earlier, that it's made us completely connected. And people who are isolated, people who are using separation as a way of life, are connected through technology. However, the media is telling us everything is bad. When COVID happened, we got locked in. We were forced to stay together because it was a global pandemic. We were forced to stay in our own homes, connected through technology. And most of us got exactly what we wanted, what we were screaming about, what we were saying that, we need to, for climate change, the better thing to do is to stay home, don't drive cars, don't go out into malls, because a lot of energy consumption happens in these malls. Bring down your lifestyle. We all experienced the greatest lifestyle ever, the exact lifestyle that we actually need to lead. And what did it actually do at the end of it? Everyone was more isolated, more scared, more anxious. So this is the second edge of technology, right? If you take too much of technology and get out of connection, then you get into these kind of places. So now look at what the political system and the media is doing, and look at what has happened through the pandemic. This cannot be resolved by continuously looking outside into the world that is accelerating through exponential technologies, as we can see today. And ChatGPT is a great example. You cannot continue to go in that world without fear and anxiety unless you have something within you that can keep up with that can be as resilient and strong as that, and that is the yoga angle. So when I looked at these two, I looked at both of these and I said, wow, this is a really fascinating and a very counterintuitive connection. I might not be able to find it, but it was really worth asking some of the questions that I've been explaining just now. And so Rishona, long-winded answer to a very short question. Does that help?
Yes, sir, that helps. Thank you so much. So my next question is that you mentioned in your book about discovering ourselves. So while writing the book, do you believe that you discovered yourself?
I knew this was coming. Short answer, yes. But let me be very much more accurate about it. Yes, I got to a point where I started discovering myself, and I started also accepting that this is going to be a process of lifelong discovery. So I think this is an important, very important question you've asked, Rishona, because many of us think that knowledge is something that we can get as a small little stock, and that's good enough for us. Whereas knowledge of oneself is a journey of self-discovery all through your life. So it's not a stock, but a flow of knowledge. And by this knowledge, I mean it's basically inner knowledge. So yes, I started discovering myself, and I was confident that I was on the right track, and I am now discovering myself probably, hopefully, at an exponential rate. But now I can also, this is something that I think would motivate everybody, is that the more you start learning about yourself and get into the journey of self-discovery, the easier it is for you to start letting go. And letting go and giving up are two different things. So for example, you do a project, right? You typically define the project. You also have some idea of, when this project needs to get completed, what is the level of quality, how is it that people should accept it, what metrics should we have, how do we measure whether what we did has been done to the best of our ability, etc., etc. So the tendency is that you start getting attached more and more, because it's like a child that you've created. And then you get so attached to it that any criticism of the output, you start taking very personally. So I'm just adding this bit because you asked the question, and I think might be valuable for everybody. That the one thing self-discovery really does is that you get to a point where you find it much easier to let go of your concepts, your thoughts, and your output.
Yes, sir, that was really helpful to know. The next question I want to ask is that when one writes a book, it can go many ways. Sometimes we get stuck thinking about how to go next or how to end the book properly. However, there are times when we can simply go on and on about it. So how was it for your book?
So, well, this, Sandeep, I think I have to commend you for this. These are absolutely fantastic questions. And I've done some of these, chats with people of our generation, and
Sunil, I told you that
brilliant.
schools don't. We have gone way beyond the school.
Yes, I know. Really full marks to you, Sandeep, for having done this and stuck it out for so many years. I know the challenges that you've been going through. We've discussed it many, many times. So, Rishona, the answer to your question is very simple. The book is a work in progress. This is not a book that was easy to complete. And around August, September 2023, see, I started thinking about the idea and starting to connect it in 2020, which is the COVID year, right? And a couple of things that I realized was, and this I need for all of you to know, because that it might also help you to realize that this is not rocket science. I'm no expert on either yoga or artificial intelligence. And if you started reading the book, you realize that the AI that I talk about here is more or less the exponential technologies that I spoke of, and yoga is basically the spiritual side, the inner side. So think of it as inner and outer, more than the words yoga and AI. But you need good words, that can define these two. These may not be the best of words, but they work really well because they create the sort of intrigue that it created in me in the market. So it's doing well as far as the book marketing is concerned. So in 2023, so I had to marinate myself in AI as well as although I knew much more about technology than about yoga. So the good news is that, someone like me, most of the people, at least that are born and live in India, whether they like it or not, whether the education is Western, Catholic, whatever it may be, like it was in my case, you do get a chance to come into contact with spiritual systems of all kinds, which is great actually. So I realized that we need a little bit more of I needed more of marination to be able to successfully or credibly even convince myself that what I've written is making sense. And so connecting the previous part about my own self-discovery and letting go, things like that, you wouldn't believe that in September last year, 2023, I decided that this book was not possible to finish and therefore there's no point in completing the book. I had 4 or 5 rewrites. And every time I would look at it, AI was already moving 2 steps ahead. By the time I would put in a placeholder for AI, I would find that something else has happened. So there's this story of Robert Oppenheimer. I wrote about it in 2021. In 2022, the movie came out. I was talking about things like, I had written things about ChatGPT type of stuff, how AI is going to be accessible to everybody. And then ChatGPT came out. So I said, well, this is a moving goalpost. There's no way that I'm going to finish it. And as far as yoga was concerned, it was an exact reverse problem. It's a 5,000-year-old, written in Sanskrit, 108 Upanishads. If you actually get down to the spiritual side of things, I said, there's no way that I'm going to figure this out. And what struck me, and this is something that I found through the text that I was reading or whatever the translations I was reading, that the Indian systems have a very, very interesting flipped way of looking at things. We don't look at details. We look for one general principle to explain everything to us. It's there in one of our Upanishads, and today I don't have the time to explain that to you. I think it's there in the book as well. So I realized that this book probably is not going to make any sense. It may not be relatable to anybody. And in the meantime, I was having a few chats with Dr. Karan Singh, and he knew that I was writing the book. So sometime in November or December last year, he says, what's happening about your book? So I said, well, I decided not to write it. He says, what do you mean, not to write it? You've already written it. So I said, yeah, I'm sorry. Technically, I've decided not to publish it. And then I gave him this entire thing, and then he said, I think you should. So I asked him a question. I said, why do you think I should? What's so good about the book, and why should the book actually be out there? And so he said, don't worry about finishing it. You can't finish it. It's a work in progress. And you're actually doing something quite interesting in the book, that you're not giving any answers. You're just bringing many questions together on behalf of the whole world, and for them to start their own process of discovery or self-discovery. So I think what is very important for the book is for it to go out there, because the timing is now for people to do all of this. It's a great book from that point of view. And therefore, let's say I bit the bullet and I said, okay, this book I cannot finish. Vishoma, you're absolutely right that it's actually quite impossible, even in normal, fictional books, to figure out, where do I end it? How do I take it to a level where I can, make it much more interesting from the climax back to how do I close the story? So many, many such stories. Okay, so that's the answer. The book is not finished yet. And probably never will be.
And sir, my last question for you here is that as an author, what do you believe is the best way to write an informative factual article yet keep the reader engaged and hooked?
See, with AI, this question is very difficult to answer. You said I'm an author. Yes, it feels nice to be called an author. This is my second book. The first book was very narrowly focused on the principal of the college where I studied. But this is the real test of this thing. Feels good to be called an author, but I think like every other profession, with the way AI is moving and technology is moving, all professions are gone. So next year at this time, or even 6 months from now at this time, if I thought I'd be able to write a book, ChatGPT and similar and their ilk will be able to write a book in 15 minutes. It'll take me 2 years anyway. So our job is over. You can't be an author. So writing an article also is going to be very, very difficult for traditional ways of writing articles to continue. This is my understanding. This is the way I would look at it. Does that mean that human authorship is gone? No. The answer is no. So while AI is here and we need to accept it, we need to figure out a partnership. That's why you'll find even in the introduction I said, is there either or is there a third way? And I think the third way is where humans and AI will become great partners. So writing an article, we will have to tell AI what to do, but we will not have to write the article. And since AI has most of the principles, it has much better grasp of the principles, it will be able to give you hit all the points that you're talking about. How do you keep them engaged? The very quick answer to that is, there are two ways of writing articles. One is the journalistic way, where you give the end right in the beginning and then fill in the back. Okay? And then there is the fiction way of writing, where you build up the entire story and give a climax at the end of it. So basically, you have an introduction and you have text in between, and then you have a way to conclude an article. These are the three pieces of an article. So when you're writing an article, the first thing is that you write. My suggestion would be that you write it in the flow. Don't worry about this structure, so to speak, because we have technology to assist us. Even forget AI, but even simple tools to help us. We will easily be able to then restructure it later on to make sure that it hits these. The last point I'd like to make about this particular question is that, it's very difficult to keep a person engaged if you're only feeding the logical mind. The easier way to engage a person is through the heart. So make it emotional, make it much more real for the other person, rather than for you to keep on mouthing the capabilities that you have and the knowledge that you have. That's a tendency and temptation we all have. I know this, let me put it out there. I think we are done in terms of time, a couple of minutes left.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. If anybody else has any questions to ask, they can raise their hand or they can type it down in the chat box.
Sandeep first.
Okay, thank you, sir. So you mentioned in your book about the human quest for truth, and what do you believe is the best way to achieve that?
Sorry, I didn't get that. The question?
In your book, you mention about the quest for truth. So what do you think is the best way to achieve that?
Broad, simple word is yoga. See, whether it is spiritual systems or scientific systems, both are going after the same thing from different sides. A scientist wants to get to the truth. What he or she thinks about the truth, the method is different. They want evidence for it. In yoga, what you do is you're not looking for evidence, but what you do is you start understanding things that go beyond language, beyond your mind. You don't get stuck in your mind, and you're able to then kind of go towards the truth. It's a tough question to answer in a minute or so, but yeah, thank you for your question.
Sunil, one quick question. I think I'm the only one who's read both your books.
Yes.
So the first one, In Principle, was about a principle. It was a very earthy story, very close to the heart. It was a story which had possibly more human element to the core, and the stories were so lifelike. While on the other hand, in your second book, you seem to have gravitated away, I would say, not gravitated towards. You have gone away from the human stories and you've got more metaphysical, you've really got information from all over the world, if I dare say it like that. If I look at that book, that was more real, more grounded, and this is more informative and this is more research driven. So when you did these two things, what was your biggest challenge?
See, obviously the second book has been much more challenging for a couple of reasons. One is that, as far as the earlier book was concerned, I was a part of that life story. Of course, I have been a part of the life story of this also because it's about me, this book as well. But I could get to a lot of people. I didn't do very much research about, what made the college the way it was, except the fact that I could speak to very many people who had met Mani Sundaram ji.
And you had the Jubilee coming up, so you were anyway connecting with people.
Yes, correct. So, as far as this, so I think the easier way to put it or the best way to put it is that book was about one person who was not me, somebody else. And this book is about the whole world, every human being, through me. This is a connection that each one, it's not about telling the story of one person to the rest of the world. It is telling the story of the reader to the reader through me. So I think that's probably the way to put it.
Yeah, thank you. So what is beautiful about both is, in one case you are telling someone else's story, and in one case you're telling your story, how you see the world.
Yes, correct.
Am I right in putting it that way?
Correct.
So Rishona, this is very interesting. You don't have the other book. So between the two books, they're like a pole apart, if I may put that dialogue here. And it's very interesting to see. But what's common in both the books is this love for the Guru. Sunil, am I right in interpreting that? In both cases, you have a Guru whom you are thinking all the time, whether it is here or there.
Yes.
You perhaps believe in what we say, #happy teachers.
Yes, I do.
Over to you, Jugjeev.
Thank you, Jugjeev, also for the opportunity. Yeah, please.
No, thank you so much. This could have gone on and on. And maybe with some meditation, yoga, everything thrown in. But unfortunately, as Sandeep says, we are in this sense, we are in a school and the bell goes and, next period has to start. So that's where we are, unfortunately, right now. But hopefully, we can connect again, and Rishona will be in touch, and I'm sure they may want to do some more stuff with you, and Rishona will be in touch. So thank you so much for taking this time coming here. It's been a very fascinating session, and really appreciate your time and what you shared with us. Thank you so much. It's a great takeaway, because you saw, I mean, he was, the word used when he entered the thing, self-reliant bodhisattva. So he's self-reliant, he was confident, he felt he could deal with whatever came his way. He tried his 5 weapons, they didn't work, but he didn't give up, right? So courage, right? And his self-confidence and he had with him the power of his moral integrity. So he had that, and that basically helped him overcome the goblin. The goblin sort of himself felt that he hadn't seen anybody like this before. So yeah, that's a very I agree with your thought. That's one of the things that you certainly take away. Anything else? Anything else?
Jogjeet sir, the forest seems to be ending up everywhere. And even if this morning's conversation with Sunil, where he talked about the 3 challenges, where environment being the major one of them, and in every story, in every book we read, we find that it always talks about the environment.
That's true. Physically, there were many, many more forests around earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yes. What else? Any other thoughts? Anything we can take away from this story? He was compassionate, right? In spite of, and he wanted good for the goblin, right? When he left him, he didn't just go away. He sort of transformed him, right? So he was compassionate and wanted, there's also an element, I'm sure, of making sure that other people were not going to get killed when they passed that forest. So he was compassionate, and he fixed what could be seen as a problem, right? For most people, they were not able to cross that forest and stay alive. So he fixed that problem too, right? So he was compassionate, and as a true ruler, he, he did what he thought was right and convinced the goblin to move to the right path. Okay, Sandeep, you want to get on to the next book?
Yeah, we'll take a show of hands if people feel they want to push the chapter off to next week. I don't mind. Honestly, I can read. I'm happy.
Okay, yeah, because we've done 3 things, so I think maybe it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, we have lots to reflect. What happens is when we do
too much,
reflection,
yeah.
You just, you don't know where to start in reflection, and that's another reason why reflections are becoming way unwieldy.
Yeah.
Look at that. Someone's already figured that out. Ki class mein chutti karo.
Correct.
Maybe idea now to capture some thoughts before we take a call. And Manisha ma'am, I think it's important for you to come in and talk.
Yes, sir.
Arfa has lots to write, Jogjeet.
Yeah, I know. So if you talk to the apple, the core morning, so if you're a resourceful tree that bears fruits of knowledge, then grow it to help others like an apple tree. Yep, absolutely. Yes, Bodhisattva was resourceful and he wanted to help others. Yes. Yes, Manisha ma'am, over to you.
Come in, Manisha.
Yes, I'm there. Basically, like last 2 days, I was there at Delhi attending a conference. So I just heard there that we all keep about holistic development of the students. So yes, it is, and it should be there. But before that, it should be the holistic development of the teachers, the adults also. Because happy teachers give happy students, and everywhere the happiness is there. So keeping that in mind, we need to understand the development of everyone, and we need to keep walking hands in hand together to another level. So that is what one takeaway I have there from that EduFest conference. So this is what exactly I wanted to discuss. And